It's 5 o'clock, I'm Rory Gallimore. A man who carried out a series of sex attacks on women in Spondon and Darley Abbey, one as young as 14, has been sentenced to 22 years in prison.
23-year-old Ilija High from Chaddesden raped a woman in Darley Abbey Nature Reserve in 2015, then went on to attack two other women in Spondon.
We're outside Derby Crown Court where serial sex attacker Ilija High has just been sentenced to 22 years in prison for a campaign of abuse that spanned across the Spondon and Darley Abbey areas.
From a personal point of view, I'm pleased that I've been able to bring this to a conclusion for our communities and in particular for those three victims. From a professional point of view, yes, there was some pressure. Yes, you do feel responsible. Yes, you are working through to try and make sure that nobody else is hurt at the hands of this individual. And there is a short sense, and it is a very short sense of satisfaction because you've got the person that's responsible and so you have that moment of elation.
It was a massive investigation and there were so many people affected by it, so a bit of sadness that we had it in the first place, a bit of sadness that we had it in Derby City where it's a huge safe place to live, so a bit of sadness that we had it. Feeling for the victims and their families and the impact it had on so many people. Feeling for impact on the suspect's family and friends who, you know, clearly didn't know what was going on. So, you know, what happened affected so many people's lives. So mixed feelings, but one of satisfaction that we got there, and we got there, and you know, he's in prison.
Most of the people in my office will admit that, you know, they still get a buzz from identifying these people. Doesn't matter how long you've been doing the job, it's our ultimate main goal is to get these identifications. Obviously in this case it worked a little bit the other way around, whereas normally we would go out, recover the evidence, that evidence would give the police officers in the investigation a name for them to go out and investigate. On this occasion what we actually did was gave them a link between two scenes, so that it did mean that once that person was known, all the evidence was there, and without the DNA link, potentially these two cases would never have been linked together. So it just goes to show you how important the DNA evidence can be.
Ilija High appeared at Derby Crown Court and pleaded guilty to all of the 7 charges against him. By doing so, he spared his victims the ordeal of having to stand up in court and relive the horrendous attacks as part of a trial.
There is always a fear with these types of instances that when a victim has lived through such an horrific ordeal that they are then made to live through it again in terms of having to provide evidence and go through a criminal justice process. The fact that Ilija High has put his hands up at an early stage, which means that those victims don't have to go to court, they don't have to relive that account, for me is probably the most satisfying element of this case, because those victims have been through enough, those victims have suffered enough, not only at the point where they attacked, but the days and weeks and months and years after this attack. I think it gives them that early part of closure, and I hope that they are then able to kind of move forward with their lives.
I absolutely know there'll be victims out there who have been a victim of a similar crime or a sexual offence who haven't, for many reasons, come forward. And I understand that, and it must be one of the most difficult things as a victim to come forward and to tell their account of something that's impacted on them hugely, something that significantly has probably affected their lives. What I would say is it's never too late to do that, and if there are any victims out there that haven't had the confidence or haven't felt the support there, or it's just not been the right time to come forward, please consider it now. We will absolutely, you know, my promise, my commitment, if anybody's out there and comes forward, we will give them that support.
The manhunt for Ilija High spanned 1.5 years and saw the police force appealing time and again for help from the public in apprehending a dangerous sex offender. The case not only shows how seriously the force treats such offences, but also what can be achieved when the police, the public and the media all work together to root out criminals, put them before the courts and keep the communities of Derbyshire safe.
I hope this case does show that we will keep going, we will pursue, we will carry on. We don't give up easily, and we'll do everything in our power to bring the person to justice.
This has been an inquiry that's run for nearly 2 years. It's been resourced, it's had a team of detectives that have been committed to it. We've continued with it, we've never lost sight of what's important, and that is making sure that our communities are safe. That offender is brought to justice, and those victims see that offender brought to justice, and that we're able to then go back, reassure our communities and say, with your help, this is what we can achieve. And that's exactly what's happened on this occasion. The help of the community, the resilience and tenacity of the police service have brought a really, really dangerous individual to the fore.
I call her Mrs Miggins. The lady who gave the information is my Mrs Miggins. She thought about giving the information, but she wasn't sure. She wasn't sure because, it was a suspicion. She didn't know if it would turn out to be the person or not. What I would say is, there's nobody ever who would be wrong having a suspicion. And if we ever have an appeal like this again, if in any doubt whatsoever, just give us the information, because we can say yes or no whether that turns out. But I'd rather do that and put some work into is it or isn't it than not have the information in the first place, because you never know that piece of the jigsaw. We can have bits of information in all sorts of ways, whether description, location, intelligence information. That one bit might be the bit we're missing. So whether through Crime Stoppers, whether through an appeal, whether online, never be in any doubt. And this is the perfect example of saying that. Mrs Miggins didn't know whether she was right or not, but she had some suspicions and she gave us that information. Anybody in the future, please help us. And don't be afraid repercussions. I haven't named Mrs Miggins. She did a fantastic, amazing thing on that day. She stood to be counted in the community of Derbyshire. She gave the information. And my appeal will be anybody else. Any doubt whatsoever, don't be afraid. Give us the information and we'll either use it or we'll discount it. But we'll always listen to you. So, help us if you can.
So in the end, the press, the police, members of the public, the local community, we all pulled together and got the result we needed.
That golden piece of the jigsaw was within our community. Our communities have come forward, they've spoken. It's allowed us to do our job, and together we've made Derbyshire a safer place. So thank you.